All right, so Don Biesemeyer, come on up, and we're going to get it on. We're going to go over parenting, having a great relationship with your kids, and very excited to hear what you got to say.
All right.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, I think the first thing in raising children is that you need to pray. All right, and pray real hard. Pray real hard when they're small. Pray real hard when they're at the fun stage, and then pray really hard when they're teenagers and getting ready to get booted out of the house. Okay, there'll be some kind of XY axis where you want them to stay, and then, well, it's time to go. Fly. Anyway, I call this thoughts and observations on raising children. Okay, and may I speak freely? I may not know what to do, but I certainly know what not to do. And so that's what I tell my kids. I said, I'm not going to, once you're out of the house and you're on your own, you're providing for yourself, I'm not going to be telling you what to do. And so theoretically, before that happens, I need to give them opportunity to fail and to succeed. And so what I like, raise your hand if you were raised in a flawed family. Okay? All right. Okay, now, growing up in a dysfunctional family, okay, now, I'm not going to question the people that didn't raise their hand, but there is some kind of question back there because we're all flawed. And I grew up in a dysfunctional family. Okay, now it had its positive points and it had its negative points. And my father was unsaved, my mother was saved, but she had her issues, and she needed a leader in her family to help guide her because she was broken when she got into the relationship. And that brokenness fell upon us. And as far as my dad was concerned, my dad was a great provider. He was, but he secluded himself to his garage in the study room. That's how he developed peace in our household. And he worked with us and did a lot of good things. He taught me a lot of good things. But I needed God in my life. Now, don't feel bad if you didn't raise your hand about dysfunctional family. Don't feel left out, because there's always good. I mean, the good examples that you have are very valuable. It's never wrong to do what's right, and it's never right to do what's wrong. Okay, and I speak this as a father. Okay, I call it. Torturing our children. I wanted, as far as dysfunctional families, Abraham had a dysfunctional family. Jacob had a dysfunctional family. You just go down the list. Jesus had somewhat of a dysfunctional family in the sense that, his brothers and didn't go along with, who Jesus was. They looked at him in the natural, not in the spiritual. But number 5 is torturing and teaching your children with a purpose. Okay, now, the kids might think that it's torture, okay, but I get a nodding head from one of my boys. But if you do it with purpose, if you teach the children with purpose, you're going to get much better results. But in Ephesians 6:4, it says, "Do not provoke your children." We've heard that earlier, to anger. Not to exasperate them to the point of resentment, with demands on the trivial or unreasonable, or humiliate them, or be abusive, or showing favoritism, but bringing them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Okay, so I've been guilty of all that. Okay, I've had to apologize for something that. The way I did things, whatever. And humility is a big part of being a father, and being willing to say you made a mistake. Now, this is a brand new thing, whatever, but I'll wait for a little bit. I'll show you an example of something. As Christ loved the church, our children are part of the church. I mean, we don't think of that oftentimes. And it says that Jacob, in Genesis 33:13, it says Jacob led his family with tenderness. And and when he was talking in Genesis about to Esau, he was going to meet Esau. Jacob did a lot of things wrong, but Esau just said, "Come on with me," as the whole host of his family, which was huge. And he says, but Jacob replied, "You know, my lord," he's talking to Esau, small l, "that the children are frail and need gentle care, and is nursing flocks," or whatever he was just talking about. And so he came at his own pace because of the young that he had with him. I wish my dad would have made me do certain things. And now at the time, you couldn't have paid me to have me communicate that to him. I didn't want to do the stuff that he wanted me to do. My mom, she made a list of chores. And in reality, you could do those chores in 10 minutes if you wanted to. Or you could take a half an hour, 45 minutes. I mean, you could drag it out. But we always wanted we had everyday chores, but on Saturday, she had a list. And I don't know why, we never really even ever think about it until we got to the very last thing on the list. We'd rush around and whatever because we wanted to go out and play and whatever. And then we get to the last thing on the list is go out to the garage and ask Dad if there's anything he wants you to do. Okay, well, I don't know why. We just go, we're going to get done. And then the last one. So we go out sheepishly. "Dad, is there anything you want me to do?" And he would get the biggest smile on his face, like we were asking it of our own free will and that we really wanted to work with him. And he'd say, "Sure." And then he'd give us a whole day worth of stuff. I mean, a whole day. Our next door neighbor would knock on the door and he'd say, can the boys come out to play? And, "No, we're working, sorry." And he'd do that 3 or 4 times a day. And he'd have us taking apart things and category. He was an electronic person, so test tubes or not test tube, but radio tubes and diodes and whatever. We'd categorize them and whatever. It was just a terrible project. He'd have me, he'd have me change the oil in the car and whatever. And then it was. Did I say it was terrible? It was terrible. And but he taught me so much. Okay, he taught me endurance. He taught me that I could do things, and he showed me how to do things. And then electronics. He was an electronic wizard in that day and age. And he tried to teach me about Ohm's law and about voltage and wattage and deeper things than that. I did not want to learn. I did not want to learn. It was like, oh. Okay, I wish I would have paid attention. I wish I did. I wish he had the endurance to get past my childish viewpoint. Okay? So what I'm trying to encourage you guys at various stages, whether you're a grandfather, whether you're going to be a dad, to pray about it and figure out what it is, because it's not everything, you don't have to do everything, but what are the important things that you can pass on to your children and your grandchildren. And there's no pill for self-discipline or self-control. It must be taught by example. Okay, I want you to think about that. I mean, I had one son that we gave each person a section of fence, and they were supposed to nail in the boards, Pretty simple project. And all the kids, they pretty much did it. And then this one son, I go back, and there's probably 200 nails on the ground that are bent, and not one board was knocked. And I kind of got mad, like, what are you doing? I mean, why are you doing that? Whatever. But I didn't realize that he, as an individual, everybody's different. He needed to be taught to do it different. If it's not working, then try something different. All right? And once I stood there and helped him, he started nailing in boards. But without any supervision, he was just do an activity, not accomplishing anything. And so having the patience and realizing that in one area, one child needs to be taught, in another area, maybe a thing, or they all need to be taught. And we look at Jesus' example, Paul's example, Abraham's example of leading and self-control. Okay, now they all had their weaknesses, but we see overall that they had something that we need. Now number 10 is every carpenter. Okay, every carpenter, to whatever problem they have, the solution is a hammer. All right, and so if you got a car problem, a hammer is not the answer. So every child needs a different slice of your pie, and so you need to evaluate. That's why prayer is so important. What does this child need? Some need a hammer. Some need a sledgehammer. But really, it's like that's not always the solution, and rarely is a solution. Now, raising children by default. Okay, how did your parents do it? Are you doing it, or are you going to do it the same as your parents? Are you going to do it the opposite of your parents? Are you going to do it different than your parents? All right, that's all fine and good, but what does God say about it? And in Deuteronomy 6:7-9, it talks about you shall teach your children as you walk, as you sit, and as you rise. All right? So it's not just come home from work in the easy chair and barking orders to your children. It's now sometimes they need that. You know, give them chores, or they can, you know, they're not paying the bills or whatever. They can help, you know, go get a glass of water or something like that. But for the most part, you need to consider: is this something that I need to demonstrate to my children and work with them? All right, not just tell them to go out and mow the lawn if they've never mowed the lawn before. You know, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to do it every time, but you need to be willing. You don't want to be somebody that just tells your kids to do the chores you don't want to do. A little bit over a long period of time equals a lot. So you don't need to teach your children all at once like a fire hose, but you need to be teaching them line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. Now, one area that I fall down in, I mean, I talk to my kids and I bring up scriptures and I bring up examples, probably to a fault, because sometimes their eyes glaze over and they're going, okay. And the more they try to hurry me, the longer it gets. Okay, yeah, right. So the fastest way is to pay attention and be able to answer the question without giving me a dumb look, you know. And in Isaiah 28:10, that's talking about line upon line, precept upon precept. And then failure is part of the process. God wastes nothing. Now, you know, sometimes we lose sight of the goal of what we're trying to do. All right? But failure is part of the process. We look at the Old Testament, and it's full of failures. God is growing and perfecting you as he uses you to grow and perfect your children. Okay? It's not just about your children, it's about you. Why we do what we do is almost as important as what we do. I want you to think about that. You can demand obedience and impart rebellion. Think about that. All right? Jesus walked among us. He demonstrated the Spirit, which brings life to the law. All right? I mean, there's the law, there's the rules, there's the discipline, but the God's Spirit brings freedom. Because human anger, in James 1:20 says, because human anger does not produce the righteousness of God. All right? So we shouldn't do anything out of anger. I mean, there's been times I've been angry. I think that these guys would nod their head. But generally, I don't argue with them, and I don't have to raise my voice to them. Sometimes I do. But anyway, James, I'll have you come up here for a second. Okay, I teased him with this, but then he said he'd be willing to do it. And so I want to just show you, when you get older kids, different types of discipline are not necessarily appropriate, okay? And so he's 18 years old. He's can be considered an adult. He's not paying for anything yet. I'm looking forward to that day. Okay, all right, but so anyway, it's on the calendar. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so if he starts to argue with me, in other words, I'll tell him to do something, and he just might immediately start arguing like that never happens. Okay, and I'll just tell him, I didn't used to do this. I used to do other things, and I just found out that wasn't effective for him. But I'd say, okay, drop down and give me 5. Okay, and so if he doesn't drop down and give me 5 right then it's 10. All right, and if he rolls his eyes at me, then it's 15. All right, count them out loud. Yeah. Until I get tired. Okay, but he knows what's coming next. All right, if there's not some kind of compliance, and at first it's just a physical compliance of, all right, I don't want to roll my eyes. It's like, okay, I'm gonna look straight ahead. But eventually, it gets to his heart when his arms get really tired. It really does. I've done 200 before. Yeah. Now, when he did that time, he did 200. I had to repent because I realized that adding another 100 was not going to help him deal with his attitude. So I knew I was going over the top. But he did do 200 push-ups. Now, I did have a little grace and gave him a little bit of time to recuperate. But it was an ordeal. I mean, it was an ordeal for him, and I realized I'm going down a path that I can't. I'm not going to go down to, it's not going to be successful. And, but there's a consequence for arguing. So I don't have to raise my voice to him, okay? And he knows that if I say he's got to do 40 push-ups, that he's going to do 40 push-ups, that we're not going to do anything else until he's got 40 push-ups under his belt. And then he does them right, and then he does it with a good attitude, okay? And it's been very effective. So if you have, especially teenage boys, I'd say, if you got, something like that, consider something like that. I mean, it can be anything, but I mean, something that works. If it's not working, then switch it, change it. All right, yeah, you're on. Well, I don't know. Let's see. So if you're gonna, oh, thank you very much. My wife's probably helped you out. Was that from you? All right. She's always looking out for me. All right. Do I need to go on a diet? Okay. All right. Shouldn't eat that whole sandwich. Yeah, push-ups. Yeah. Well, sit-ups probably for me. All right. So then if he thinks that I'm misjudging something, I give him permission to say, may I speak freely? Now, he has to start complying before he says that. In other words, it's not like an argument. But if you give me, if I tell you to do 200 push-ups, okay, then what would you say if you think that, I think maybe you misjudged that. May I please speak freely? Now, I've made a promise to them. I am not going to, if I may not say yes, because I might need it right now. If they're out in the street and they want to talk about it, I say, obey me first, But I believe he knows that he can say, may I speak freely? And if I say yes, that I will not attack him. He can say even things that are wrong with respectfully. And he will not get repercussions from that. And I think that's really important to consider that if you're barking and whatever, you're going to teach them to keep secrets, you're going to teach them to not come to you. And so anyway, you want to make sure you're not teaching rebellion. Okay, I had a vision of a large piece of granite that was imperfect but rectangle, and you can go home. You can now go. No, you can't go home. You can't go home. So anyway, just really quickly, this master, an imperfect master, not Jesus, but an imperfect master, was chiseling this piece of granite, and the granite had imperfections. The master that was doing it was good at what he did, but he was not perfect. And then God showed me it in fast forward, like we see things in slow motion. You know, we're up really close and we're not seeing the changes or whatever. But Jesus was telling me that, look what I'm doing. I am using an imperfect carver, and I'm creating a masterpiece with imperfect granite. It's got pockets inside or whatever, and he'd step back, but he would chisel. Sometimes he'd really whack it, and sometimes he'd just look at it. And he would go around and make the imperfections into something that was marvelous and part of the sculpture. And I said, so God's working with imperfect raw material to create his masterpiece with an imperfect person. An imperfect student is carving and chiseling imperfect material. All right. And then kindness softens the blow. You can always be kind. Even when your kids irritate you to death, you can still be kind. And that makes the lesson just a little bit easier for them to hear. Everyone needs to reevaluate. This is for us older people, and it's for the young people. Okay, everyone needs to reevaluate their childhood from an adult perspective, and ultimately from God's perspective. All right, there's things that happen to us and are happening to the children we're trying to teach that they don't know the whole picture, and so we need to realize that. And there was an example of Joseph. He saw that God, his brothers tried to do him evil, but God meant it for his good. And he was able to receive that and then be able to receive much more of what God was doing. And then working with free will. Teaching our children the concept of may I speak freely. We talked about that. And then teaching them how to be respectful. And there's one I missed, but let's see, I'm almost done. Well, it must not be that important. I'll find it as soon as I quit. So then anyway, for all of us, and especially the older people here, water under the bridge. Don't just stand on the shores of regret. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Let God take you down the river. There's a lake or an ocean ready for God to redeem. God is bigger than your regrets. Okay, so I have children. I have 8 children. Okay, we got yours, mine, and ours. 3 from one side, from Emily, 3 from me, and then 2 we've adopted. And they all have different takes on life. They all thought they were neglected in some way. I'm just telling you. But they're all reevaluating their life in a different perspective. We've got some that are coming back to the Lord. We got some that are still out there. We got some that are still training. But don't give up, because God is a redeemer. You are not a failure. I don't care how many mistakes you made. God is able to redeem. So if you feel, I got kids and I was too busy at work or whatever, that is irrelevant at this moment in time. And so if you bring it to God, God is a redeemer. And think of, what are you trying to accomplish? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Are you just trying to get kids to do chores? Or are you trying to develop that beautiful masterpiece that God desires to create? And so allow God to redeem whatever, because God wastes nothing. I can guarantee you that. And so I have a decent relationship with most of my children, and in some ways all my children, but it's God that is carving their lives. Some of them are not in my control. I give advice only when it's asked generally, I mean, I can be talkative so they can get some advice with me not giving it. But for the most part, once they're out of the house and they're not dependent on me, then I'm waiting for them to ask me. So anyway, do you have any questions? Yes.
So you've got two boys.
Yes.
They're very different from one another.
Absolutely.
And how do you approach parenting one versus the other?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and it's not easy, because they both have different needs, and so I try to treat them individually, and I try to when I talk to James, I'm talking to James. He knows I'm talking to James. I'm not talking about Dylan's issues or whatever, or that he whatever. And when I'm talking to Dylan, I'm talking to Dylan, and I try to communicate that when I'm listening, and that I'm trying to take there's different issues where one is talk to me and whatever, and he comes back and he says, well, what about this? Whatever. I says, I thank you for coming to me. It's on my plate to address, but if it has to do with the other child, then now it's none of your business, okay? And so I try. Now, you're not going to do it perfectly. They're going to look at it, well, how come he got to do this and you didn't do that? You know, but I try to communicate, and I try to be fair, and God's not really fair, but I mean, I try to be fair in the sense as far as being aware of the differences in how I parent a child. And anyway, I try to keep communication lines open so that they tell me things I do not want to know. I mean, they do. I mean, I would never tell my dad this and that and whatever. And in one way, it's very encouraging. In other ways, it's like, oh man, did I need to know that? You know. And so anyway, it's been an interesting. I'm doing things differently with these two than I did with my other 6 kids. And my other kids, they roll their eyes sometimes. You let them do that or whatever. You know. I mean, it's like, but I'm doing it more from the New Testament than from the Old Testament, but including the Old Testament. Yes.
You know, we can see your and Emily's family out front.
Yeah.
These boys that,
Yeah.
They've been a joy for me to get to know. How did you instill the importance of honoring the name, the Biesemeyer name? Because that, to me, seems to be, I mean, they do a very good job of representing their family. How did you instill that in them and maybe your other kids?
Yeah, well, we're all at different stages of that, but it really has to do with the walking in the way. When you're walking, when you're sitting, and when you're rising, talking about why you do what you do, and then holding them accountable, and then not shaming them. I mean, when they goof up, and you know, that's why I think. I mean, I could be oblivious, so you know, my boys know they can tell me, but I mean, at least to some point. I'm sure they don't tell me everything, but I just reinforce. I have little sayings, you know, that Dylan will recite them. I mean, he could play me up here because he'll recite. I know, and he'll say, "You're going to say this, and you're going to say this, and you're going to say this," and it as you walk and as you sit down and you get up, those things, if you're acting it out, then it's much easier for them to receive. And now, one thing I'm shy on is forcing them to read God's Word. Okay, that we do it from time to time, and then I mean I'm on a regular basis, but you know they're off to school before I'm getting going, type thing, and so I sometimes lose that recipe, and yet that is probably the most critical thing that they need is to be able to actually read the scriptures and take it in as their own. But until I correct that, they hear it from me. They hear the scripture from me. We talk about scripture, and we're in a position of handing a baton to them, and them taking the baton and not just falling off the wagon, but continuing it on. And that is why I do what I do, and that's my goal. So, does that answer your question? All right.
right, Don, you did a great job. Thank you. All right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break.